you know, there can be what you call awakening on the personal level, like becoming more of yourself, discovering your true self, becoming more self-empowered, loving yourself, becoming more present. Learning to say no, set healthy boundaries. Knowing when to say, fuck off. And you know, some of this can there's no definitive line that separates the awakening on a personal level and the full-on awakening to no self. Because on the personal level, the awakening, it really does feel like you're doing it, like you're taking action and it's your choices and you are becoming empowered. You're becoming more of yourself. And this is very different from experientially feeling in the body that it's just what's happening. That there is no real choice in it. These choices are being made and there's no one at the center of it. So the awakening, when it's a falling away of self, it has a really different feel. Like you're not trying to be something anymore. You're not trying to be your true self. You're actually, things are falling away. Like the ways to be are falling away. The care about what other people think are just falling away, because the fear from which that arose, that original sense of fear of me and them, me and another, that itself is confronted and it itself dissolves, and therefore the no self everywhere is clearly seen. The death of you equals the death of everyone. The disappearance of you is when everyone disappears. So then you're no longer able to see anyone anywhere. And so the care about what other people think really diminishes, or at least it can. So if there's an intense conditioning there to really, for example, have low self-esteem like there was here, there still might be some adjusting, some getting used to. Remnant patterns, thought patterns, emotional patterns can still be there. You can still be massively triggered, especially in the beginning, as the self is falling away, or the remnants of the self are falling away. Like that can still be a thing. Like this, it's less and less seen as self-consciousness now. It's seen as these patterns, these conditioned patterns that are still running in the body because they have momentum. Often they don't disappear all of a sudden. Often it takes some apparent time, and that is what happened here. Like YouTube was an amazing testing ground for that, or a playground. Like massively challenging at times. So if we're calling awakening or here, where when I'm referring to awakening, I'm referring to the disappearance of self, like the complete disappearance of self. And therefore, when there isn't a needing to be a certain way or appear a certain way, act a certain way, be perceived a certain way, because ultimately it is coming from a fear of what other people think, of not being accepted, of not belonging, of feeling that sense of unworthiness, not enoughness, loneliness. So when all of those things are triggered and really felt through, and it might take several times for them to be triggered, come up, and be felt, when that dissolves, then literally there is just a freedom to be. A freedom to be just as the body is. A freedom to be shy, a freedom to be weird, a freedom to be awkward. To be just as it is. As weird as it is. And we're all weird. And then when that carelessness is there, when the body is just free to be as it is, and there's this impersonal, full acceptance of how the body is, because it just is, because that is how it is, that's how it's acting, that's how it's arising. It is not personal to you, to anyone. We're all unique, we're all weird, we're all a little funky. There is no perfect in that sense. There is no normal in that sense. And what this thing we call society is doing is really, we're trying to belong in it in whatever way we can. And so we manipulate ourselves to belong. We don't want to be an outcast. And that's totally normal. That's just the basic like survival mechanism of I would say probably any living organism, but it's intensified in the human because there's identification with it. And then it becomes much more complex, much more personal, much more meaningful, much more important, and therefore that much more devastating, that much more impactful. And it hurts. It can really hurt. So here, when the center just completely drops, the care goes with it. And that might sound cold, that might sound like not a good thing to the person, because it is the opposite of the person. The person cares so much about everything, because it has meaning put onto everything. It finds certain things very important. It's good. It's important to be a good person. It's important to be this type of person, to believe in this, to stick up for this, to fight for this. And that's scary. It's really scary for the person to really let go of that identity. That was a pretty big struggle here as well. But when it fell away, you know, the care to be good or bad, like none of it made sense anymore. It was just how the body was. It was just how it was reacting in that moment, or what emotion was coming up in that moment, what story was arising in that moment. It didn't mean I was good. It didn't mean I was bad. It didn't mean anything. That's just what was arising. And it's so neutral. And when it's more and more seen like that, that is unconditional love. Unconditional love is already completely, fully okay with whatever is arising. And you know, that's just a description. That's not actually how it is. But in that energy, in that, the transformation, and again, that's just a word, but maybe energetically feel what's being said, not just intellectually. That is where transformation just happens on its own. That body is then really free to be exactly as it is. To be fully silent, to be fully talkative, to fully express, to just sit there and be. Why is one better than the other? Why is one worse than another? Why is being sad worse than being happy? Why must we stick to something? Why must we differentiate? Why must we make these borders and distinctions and say this is good, this is right, this is how it should be? Why can't we just be? That doesn't mean go out and make a fool of yourself. That's not what's being said. This is a falling back into simplicity. This is the falling away of these boundaries and walls and ways to be. This is a melting into what is. Just purely what is. Simply what is. And what is not known. It's not a thing. It's not. It's not anything. So again, it depends on where you are, because back in the day, it was helpful to identify as a highly sensitive person or an empathic person, to kind of know and land there for a second and feel understood, feel like I belonged, feel like I was heard or seen. From there, and then a moving on happened, a letting go of that identity, of that label. And this is kind of what life is in all areas. It's a constant, like, finding oneself and letting it go. Finding oneself and letting it go. Until finally, there is no you to be found. It all just disappears. It all just disintegrates back into its original essence, which is nothing. It's empty. It's full of love. It's full of love beyond a personal love. This is not a love that turns into hate. That is very common for the person. That is likely when living in the energetic idea of opposites. But here, that is inclusive of everything, that is not excluding anything, that is wholeness already, that isn't comprehensible in any way. It just unconditionally is what it is. It sees no problem in you. It sees no wrong in you. You were never at fault.